There is a room in your mind that you have never seen, and yet you have been decorating it since you were 4 years old. It has no windows. It has no doors that you can find in daylight. But at night, when your guard is down, when a stranger's laugh hits a frequency you recognize from somewhere you cannot name, that room opens, and you walk in, and you call it love. I want you to notice something as you listen to my voice right now. Notice the weight of your body in the chair. Notice how easy it is to simply listen, to let the words move through you without effort. The way water moves through a canyon it has carved over 1,000 years. Because that canyon was not carved yesterday. Neither were you. And in the next 15 minutes, we are going to walk down into the canyon together. And I am going to show you the architect who built it. You will not like him at first. You may not even believe he exists. But by the end of this, you will recognize his handwriting on every doorframe of every relationship you have ever walked into and walked out of, bruised, confused, telling yourself the same tired sentence. I just have bad luck in love. You do not have bad luck. You have a blueprint. Have you ever wondered why you keep falling in love with the same person in different bodies? Different name, different face, different city, same ending. The same silence that swallows you. The same hunger for a version of affection that always seems to arrive just after you've stopped hoping for it, or never arrives at all. You tell your friends, this one is different. You believe it. In the marrow of your bones you believe it. Because the chemistry is undeniable, electric, cinematic. And then, months later, sometimes years later, you are sitting in the dark, asking the same question you asked the last time, and the time before that. Why does this keep happening to me? Here is the sentence I need you to sit with, the one your conscious mind will resist, and your unconscious mind already knows to be true. You are not unlucky in love. You are loyal. Devastatingly, invisibly loyal to a pattern that was designed before you had the language to name it, before you could even walk, in the years when your entire nervous system was being wired by the faces that leaned over your crib. This is not poetry. This is neuroscience wearing poetry's clothes. The infant brain does not evaluate whether love is safe. It only learns what love looks like, and whatever it looked like, whatever it felt like, however it arrived, late or cold or conditional or smothering or gone, that became the template. Not a preference, a template, a silent architecture, poured in concrete before you ever had a say in the blueprint. And here is the cruelest part of the design. The part that keeps this pattern alive, decade after decade, relationship after relationship. That architecture does not advertise itself as pain. It disguises itself as chemistry. Think back to the last person who made your chest tighten the moment you saw them. The one who walked into a room and every cell in your body seemed to lean forward, uninvited, like a plant turning toward a light it hasn't seen in years. You called it a spark. You called it fate. You called it the realest thing you'd ever felt. But I want you to ask yourself a more dangerous question now, quietly, just between us. What if that spark wasn't attraction at all? What if it was recognition? Recognition is not a gentle word. Recognition means your nervous system looked at a stranger and said, I know you. Not from this life. From the first one. From the original architecture. Something in the way they spoke to you, or didn't speak to you. Something in the timing of their attention. Warm then cold, close then distant, familiar then withheld. Matched a rhythm your body memorized before you had a single conscious memory to compare it to. And your body, brilliant and loyal, and utterly indifferent to your happiness, mistook that familiarity for destiny. This is what the depth psychologists after Jung would call the return of the repressed. But I want to give it a name that will live in your body, not just your mind. I want you to call it ghost chemistry. Because that is exactly what it is. You are not falling for the person standing in front of you. You are falling for the ghost standing behind them. The original figure. The mother who was there but not present. The father who arrived only in bursts of unpredictable warmth. The caregiver whose love had to be earned, performed for, chased. The ghost steps into the new person, like a hand into a glove, and you, the one doing the falling, cannot tell the glove from the hand. All you feel is electricity. All you feel is that you have finally found something real. This is the architecture of what the old language of psychology calls repetition compulsion, and I want you to really let this term settle into you, because once you see it, You will not be able to unseat it in your own history. Repetition compulsion is the unconscious drive to recreate the exact emotional conditions of your original wound, again and again. Not because you enjoy suffering, but because some ancient, stubborn, almost heroic part of you believes that if you just try hard enough this time, if you're just lovable enough, patient enough, good enough, quiet enough, small enough, you can finally rewrite the ending. You can turn the cold parent warm. You can turn the leaving parent into the one who stays. You are not choosing partners. You are casting understudies for a play that never got the ending you needed, and you keep dragging new actors onto the same stage, hoping that this time, finally, the curtain will fall differently. And it never does, because you are not actually trying to solve the relationship in front of you. You are trying to solve the one behind it. I want you to notice how your breathing has changed since I said that. Some of you just felt something tighten in your chest. That is not an accident, and it is not something to be afraid of. That tightening is information. It is your body confirming what your mind has spent years denying. Let's go deeper, because there is a mechanism underneath this pattern that most people never learn, and once you understand it, an entire decade of your romantic history will suddenly make sense in a single, uncomfortable exhale. Your body cannot easily distinguish between the stress of danger and the stress of desire. Cortisol is cortisol. Adrenaline is adrenaline. When your heart races because someone is inconsistent, because you don't know if they'll text back, because their affection feels like a prize you have to win, rather than a gift you're simply given, your body floods with the exact same chemical cocktail it would produce if you were being chased through a dark forest by something with teeth. And here is the trap, the elegant, cruel, brilliant trap the silent architect built into you. Your brain, in its endless effort to make sense of your own physiology, looks at that racing heart, that flushed skin, that inability to think about anything else, and it draws a conclusion. It says this must be passion. This must be the real thing. Because surely, something that feels this intense could not simply be the oldest wound in your body, lighting up like a switchboard that never stopped waiting for someone to call. You have been mistaking the fire alarm for the fireworks show. The steady, secure, emotionally available person, the one who texts back when they say they will, who tells you plainly what they feel instead of making you decode it, who does not disappear and reappear like weather, often does not produce that same electric spike. And so your nervous system, trained since infancy to associate love with a particular flavor of uncertainty, quietly, almost imperceptibly, files that steady person under boring, under safe but not exciting, under not the one. You do this without ever consciously deciding to. It happens beneath the floor of your awareness, in the basement where the architect works, alone, unseen, redrawing the same blueprint every single time you think you're finally choosing freely. This is the moment, right here, where I want you to stop defending your past choices for just a second. Not to shame yourself. Shame is just another wound wearing a disguise, and we are not here to add to the architecture, we are here to expose it. I simply want you to ask honestly, in the quiet of wherever you're sitting right now, listening to this, when has love ever felt calm to you? When has it felt like it wasn't a performance, a chase, a test you might fail? If the answer is rarely or never, you are not broken. You are simply still living inside a blueprint drawn by someone who loved you imperfectly, or couldn't love you consistently, or loved you only when you met conditions you were too young to understand you were meeting. And the architect who drew those plans is closer to you than you have ever wanted to admit. He is not a villain in a story outside of you. He built his office inside your own chest, and he has been quietly signing off on every relationship you've entered ever since. We are about to open the door to his office, and once we do, you will never see your love life the same way again. And now we open the door. Picture it with me, because I want your body to be inside this image, not just your mind. A room, dimly lit, somewhere beneath the floor of your everyday awareness. No windows, as I said before, a single desk, and behind that desk, a figure who has never once left his post, who has been drafting and redrafting the same set of blueprints since before you could speak a full sentence. This is not a demon. This is not a villain you need to slay. He is, in his own broken way, trying to protect you. That is the part that will surprise you the most. The architect is not your enemy. He is a frightened, devoted employee who has never received the memo that you survived. He still thinks it is 1990, whatever year. Still thinks you are small. Still thinks the only way to keep you safe is to make sure you never walk into a love so unfamiliar, so foreign to your original wiring, that you wouldn't know how to survive it. Safety, to him, does not mean peace. Safety means familiarity. And so, patiently, invisibly, he keeps drawing you back toward the only floor plan he trusts. This is the Jungian shadow at work, though Jung himself would tell you the shadow is not simply your darkness. It is everything about yourself you have refused to look at directly, whether it is dark or not. And nothing hides in the shadow more completely, more comfortably, than the exact shape of the love you did not receive as a child. You did not repress the memory of that love, or that absence of love, because you are weak. You repressed it because a child cannot survive consciously knowing, every single day, that the person who was supposed to protect them was also, in some way, the source of their fear. So the psyche does what it has always done since the beginning of the human story. It splits. It takes the unbearable knowledge and it sends it down past the reach of ordinary thought, into a chamber where it can sit quietly, unprocessed, unresolved, waiting. But nothing waits forever without asking to be seen. And this is where the architect becomes almost poetic in his cruelty. Though I would argue it is not cruelty at all. Only devotion twisted into the wrong shape. Every time you meet someone who echoes that original wound, some rhythm of unpredictability, some flavor of emotional distance, some particular way of being almost enough, the shadow does not scream in warning. It sings. It sings the oldest lullaby you know, the one your body learned before you learned your own name. And you, standing in a bar or a coffee shop or a doorway somewhere, hear that lullaby and call it love at first sight. I want you to think now, gently, without judgment, of your last heartbreak. Not the surface story you tell at dinner parties, the one about timing, or distance, or two good people who simply weren't compatible. I want you to go underneath that story, to the moment, right before it started to unravel, and ask yourself a question the architect does not want you to ask. What did this person's absence feel like? Not their presence, their absence. Because, I promise you, if you sit with that feeling long enough, you will find it has a texture you have felt before, long before this relationship, long before you were old enough to consent to feeling it at all. This is the mechanism of what we might call the wound magnet, though the phrase itself is almost too gentle for what actually happens inside you. You are not passively attracting these people the way a magnet attracts metal from across a room. You are actively, unconsciously, scanning every room you enter for the precise emotional frequency of your original caregiver. Your nervous system runs this scan in milliseconds, faster than conscious thought, faster than the polite small talk you make while it happens. It listens to tone of voice. It watches for the particular way someone's eyes shift when they're about to withhold something. It notices who leans in and who leans away, and how much effort it takes to close that gap. And when it finds a match, even a partial one, even just a flicker of that old familiar rhythm, it does not send you a warning. It sends you butterflies. This is why the emotionally unavailable so often feel irresistible, and the emotionally available so often feel like something is missing. Nothing is missing. What's missing is the specific ancient tension your body was trained to associate with love. Peace feels unfamiliar, and the unconscious mind, in its endless confusion between familiar and safe, will choose familiar almost every single time, then hand your conscious mind a beautifully convincing story about chemistry, about fate, about finally meeting someone who understands you, to explain a choice that was never really yours to begin with. Let that land for a moment. Let it settle into the room of your body the way smoke settles into the corners of a house no one has aired out in years. Because here is where the pattern becomes a loop, and this is the part almost no one sees until it's pointed out to them directly. You do not just choose the familiar wound. You then work tirelessly, desperately, sometimes for years, to fix it this time. This is the second half of repetition compulsion, and it is the half that makes it so devastating, because it disguises itself as devotion, as love, as commitment, when really it is negotiation with a ghost. You find someone who is emotionally withholding, and some determined, exhausted part of you decides quietly, without ever announcing it out loud, that if you can just get this person to finally choose you fully, to finally stay, to finally say the thing you've been waiting to hear, it will somehow reach backward through time and heal the original wound. As if this new person is holding the exact key to a door that was locked decades before they were ever born. This is not weakness. I need you to hear that clearly, because the architect wants you to believe it is. This is one of the most sophisticated, if misguided, survival strategies the human psyche has ever developed. You are trying to master retroactively an experience that once mastered you. Psychologists call this the repetition compulsion's core promise, the idea that mastery is possible through reenactment. And on paper, it almost makes sense. If I can turn this cold, unavailable, inconsistent love into something warm and reliable, then some deep, unconscious part of me will finally believe I was never unworthy of love in the first place, that I was never the problem, that the door was never locked because of something wrong with me. But here is the devastating truth the architect never tells you, because if he did, his entire office would collapse overnight. You cannot heal an old wound by earning a new person's love. Even if this new person eventually gives you everything you're chasing, even if the impossible happens and they stay, and they choose you, and they say the words you've been starving for, it will not undo what happened when you were small. It cannot. The equation was never actually about them. It was always about you, at 4, at 7, at 11 years old, standing in a doorway, waiting for someone to turn around. And that child is still standing there, still waiting. No adult relationship, however healed, however hard one, can walk backward through time and pick that child up. Which means every relationship built on this pattern is, from its very first spark, an attempt to solve an equation that has no solution in the present tense. This is why even the ones that don't end in a dramatic collapse still leave you feeling strangely hollow, strangely unfinished, like a song that resolves on the wrong chord. You got the person, you didn't get the resolution, because the resolution was never theirs to give. I want you to sit in this next silence with me, not as punishment, but as an act of mercy toward yourself. Somewhere in your history, there is a specific moment, maybe one you've never spoken aloud to another human being, where you learned that love had conditions, that you had to be quieter, or smaller, or more accommodating, or less needy, or somehow different than you naturally were, in order to receive affection that should have been unconditional. That moment is not your fault. You did not build the architecture. You inherited it, the way you inherited the color of your eyes, the shape of your hands. But here is where the story changes. Here is where you stop being merely a tenant in a building someone else designed. Awareness, the first blueprint you get to draw yourself. The moment you can see the architect, name him, watch him move through your history with his quiet, devoted, misguided precision, he loses the one thing he has always relied on to keep working undisturbed. He loses your unconsciousness. He can no longer operate in the dark because you have just turned on the light. You are not doomed to keep falling in love with the same ghost in different bodies. You are simply, for the first time, being asked to notice the ghost before you mistake him for a future. And noticing, uncomfortable as it is the beginning of the only real freedom that has ever existed for any of us. Not the freedom to feel nothing, the freedom to finally choose with open eyes, instead of being quietly chosen for. The architect built this room without your permission, but you, and only you, hold the one key he never counted on, the key of seeing clearly. And now that you have picked it up, you will never be able to set it down again.